My name's Simon, and I've been studying Logosophy since 2020. And I'm a father, partner to a very patient wife, and I have a kind of portfolio career of doing digital design work and working with uh, kids with special needs. And what I'd like to talk about is one of the first things I began learning in Logosophy, which really started a kind of shift, which started slow at first, but really began to transform the way I lived life in certain ways. And it started with what sounds quite simple. She said that thoughts, such as we've all had them, I need to get the milk, all of these, that what that is that something that can be seen with as much reliability as we can touch objects outside. And in one way, like a lot of things in Logosophy, that can sound kind of almost self-evident at first. Yeah, of course I have thoughts. I've been having them my entire life. But then one question occurred to me in this is, how do we know we're having the thought? We're not using our senses like touch or taste, but we know we're having thoughts. So what is this thing that we're connecting to? And Logosophy talks about exactly this. That this is what we call an inner world, which is not a mystical, far off domain. It's part of us. And it can be studied in a very systematic and clear and coherent way. So this is why Logosophy is called like a science, and it does mean it in this very real way. It's not just like a metaphor. But another question occurred to me in this is, if we have this inner world that we've been having our entire life, why do we need something called Logosophy, like external? Why can't we just start observing it, like paying attention to this? Why do we need like a school and students? And the answer to that is, well, we can do that. We can just start, but there's a kind of helpful analogy here, which is, if we imagine we're facing like a big piece of land, you know, full of forests and trees and possibly animals moving in there. Yes, we could just walk into it and start trying to explore it and figure out what's what, which plants we could eat. But really, it makes more sense for us to go in with a guide, someone who's been in that terrain, knows it, not to tell us, to dictate beliefs about that land, but to guide us to navigate through it. Also, probably what we would want is some field guides. So we would study, like someone who's developed the knowledge of different plants, what they are. Again, we would want to go into the land to actually test and explore what those are, not just read the books and have the theoretical knowledge. And we'd also want other people that are also trying to explore this land with us, for companionship, to compare notes, for support when the terrain gets tough. And this is what Logosophy is, and this is why it exists as an institution and something that is not just a book someone can read. Perhaps this still sounds a little bit exotic, like exploring foreign lands. So I want to bring this down to like a personal example to show that this does actually have relevance for our everyday life. So what I used to have was the tendency to want to be right in discussions or arguments or situations in life. And maybe in some of these cases I was factually right, but the problem is sometimes the way that manifested caused like aggravations, awkwardness in my life, and in some cases even slight distancing from people that I'd known. But the strange thing is that I'd not exactly been aware of this like for quite a bit of my life. Perhaps I'd notice it occasionally here and there, but not exactly sure what it was, what to do about it. In Logosophy, one of the field guides, let's call it, shows you that there's a propensity called the propensity to argue. And this is a very precise like description of certain way your inner world and thoughts works, like what pattern it follows. And through this, I was able to recognize that this was actually active in me, even though I didn't necessarily want it to be. And so through beginning to observe this, see that it was happening, and at first beginning to recognize when it happened afterwards, but then beginning to recognize as it was beginning to happen, and then moving to actually beginning to change that pattern so that it was no longer in my life and it didn't need to be. This was a process, but once I realized that it was there, this happened, actually, it was one of the first, let's call, successes of Logosophy, where I realized that this was definitely a real thing, and it could have real effects. So this is one example, and it started from something quite small, really, just noticing small things. But this is something that can apply really to all of your life. There's more areas that this can apply to, and I think anyone to whom that sounds interesting will have their own examples, their own things they struggle with. Everyone has this to one degree or another, and they would be able to prove to what extent that they can use Logosophy to help this and to make real changes to their own inner world.